Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Awards Watch Oscar podcast. This is podcast number 61, and I am your host, Eric Anderson. And it's actually a Golden Globes podcast, and that's because the Golden Globes are this Sunday. It's Thursday right now when we're recording this podcast, but you're probably going to hear it on Friday, or hopefully on Friday. So I think we should just get underway. Matt, how are you, Matt?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, and I didn't even introduce you. This is Matt, Goldrush gang member Matt. My goodness, I already got ahead of myself.
Thank you.
So we were kind of just gabbing a little bit before, and as we do in the forums of Awards Watch 2, just kind of dumbstruck at how crazy this season is. It's really kind of just begun, too. The Globes are the first televised awards, and even though they're not industry awards or a guild, like a Screen Actors Guild or anything like that, we put weight on them because they are the first. But this year is just upside down. We don't have anything that we can just nail down as like, okay, this is happening. There are so many variables in virtually every category, and it's making it super exciting, super frustrating, and everything rolled into one. Would you kind of agree with that a little bit, Matt?
Yeah, it just seems very split this year. There's no real, I guess, consensus movie, and even the movies, that feel strong, it seems like each one of them has at least one significant weakness or something working against it, whether that be, a guild it's missed, a precursor it's missed of some sort. For King Dinn for Call Me By Your Name this year. And, Dunkirk, Miss SAG, Miss WGA today. Not necessarily expected, but nominations it could have gotten. Get Out and Lady Bird both missed director nominations at the Golden Globes. So it just feels like each film has something working against it. So there's not really one film we can point to right now and say that's way out ahead. Or we can't even, sort of, because of that, on the flip side, we can't really dismiss any contenders at this point either. So it's very fluid right now.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's so tough, and even just looking at the Globes, because they could very well go and do their own thing compared to what happens with SAG and PGA and DGA. But there's legitimate cases for most films in the top category. If you're looking at it purely from who got what, then you have like The Shape of Water and The Post and Three Billboards are the strongest because they have the corresponding director and screenplay nominations. And Shape of Water and The Post have acting nominations. Oh, and Three Billboards to boot. So that makes for a pretty tough race. Call Me By Your Name and Dunkirk are behind that. I would be surprised to see either of them actually take it, because Call Me By Your Name only has 3, and Dunkirk only has 2. It has motion picture and director, which is pretty small. Even with a group that doesn't have that many categories, it's still a pretty slight number to then come out on top. But when you then look at those 3, at Shape of Water, The Post, and Three Billboards, I have seen predictions for all 3 of them all over the place. Mm-hmm. There is no consensus. And it's weird because, again, the Globes are like 90 people. They're foreign journalists. They're not industry. They're not guild. They're their own thing. But I feel that they will go with their nomination leader, which is Shape of Water. But I can see the Post absolutely making a play here, and maybe only here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, because obviously Shape of Water led with nominations. 3 Billboards hit pretty much everything it could have. I guess it did miss Woody Harrelson here, but I mean, it still got in for supporting actor. I believe it even got a score nomination, which was a bit of a surprise. Director, and then the Post could be a good way, a sort of an FU to Donald Trump, so to speak. And also, just because the Post has been slagging a bit, it could be a good time for the HFPA to give it a boost than it needs. I would say the Post needs this a lot more than 3 Billboards and Shape of Water does, for sure. 3 Billboards, Shape of Water, they could still do very well in this race. They don't necessarily need this win. I would say the Post needs this win of the 3 the most, for sure. But yeah, all 3 of them are conceivable winners. Right now, I would agree with you. I'm leaning towards Shape of Water. But 3 Billboards apparently is a movie they like a lot. It was evident in the nominations. The sort of chatter that's spurted out since then has sort of reinforced that. And The Post, again, it's those 3 films that got the corresponding director and screenplay nominations. And that's usually an indicator of which one it's going to go to. So all 3 of them are definitely conceivable options. But like I said, I'm leaning to Shape of Water because it feels like that's the way the wind's been blowing there. Mm-hmm. But the Post is an excellent opportunity to make a statement both politically and within the context of the race, because obviously it's the one that's been in trouble for the last couple of weeks. It missed WGA today, which was pretty shocking, I'd say.
Yeah.
And the SAG nominations, there's been some speculation about whether there were significant screener issues or whatnot, but you can't use that excuse for WGA. That was a significant miss. That hurts a lot. It probably hurts it a lot more than the SAG miss, because the SAG miss, you can argue that maybe screeners were an issue. You can't with this one. Mm-hmm. So I think Shape of Water wins, but I think the Post needs it the most, and it would not surprise me if HFPA went that way to make a statement and give it a leg up in the race.
Well, what's kind of weird or funny about it is that essentially Meryl Streep's Cecil B. DeMille speech last year was basically, that was the speech. And it makes me second guess them choosing this now this year as a result in a weird way. But then there was, what was it, did that come from Gold Derby, I think, that the last film to have 6 nominations at the Globes and then win nothing was Godfather Part 2.
Yeah.
Which was a pretty good statistic. It's a really old one. Yeah. Because right now I'm not predicting the Post to win anything. And it has 6 nominations.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it not winning anything because, there's not really a category where you can point to and say, oh, that's obviously one they're going to try and reward it in. Actress is really competitive. You got Frances McDormand, Sally Hawkins in that category. Tom Hanks seems like a real long shot actor. Screenplay is possible, but the HFPA tends to like to award someone that's at least semi-known to the public for screenplay. Mm-hmm. They like to get a celebrity up there. That's why you see something like Aaron Sorkin winning for Steve Jobs. Even though he didn't even get nominated for an Oscar for that, he still won the Globe. So they like to get someone with some public recognition up there. So that seems unlikely, possible, but unlikely, I'd say.
Yeah.
So it could be one of those where it just wins picture and nothing else, though. They've done that before. Moonlight did that just last year.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, I could definitely see it being a situation where the Post wins picture and nothing else. They don't have a problem doing that, which is a little different than the Academy, where you need to at least win 1 or 2 other awards.
Yes, definitely. And what's really kind of funny about those 3 films is that they're competing directly with each other in so many categories. They have screenplay, director, lead actress, film, that they're all competing directly with each other on. Mm-hmm. And the Globes could, sort of split things, and I wonder if they might be kind of wanting to after the total sweep from La La Land last year.
Because that's not the norm for them. You don't usually do that. They usually try to make all the studios happy. So I think you're right. I think they may go in the reverse and overcompensate for last year by really spreading the wealth. I could see a situation where no film gets more than, say, 2 wins.
That would be crazy.
But I mean, I could see it. I could definitely see that situation where they try to make sure everyone goes home happy, because I'm sure there were a lot of people not happy last year walking out of the Golden Globes. I mean, I'm sure there were a lot of people who walked out of there going, really? La La Land for screenplay? Was that necessary? Like, come on. Like, I like La La Land a lot, but I mean, you were going to give it 5, 6 other awards. I mean, give it to, Lonergan, Jenkins, so... Well,
that's why at the end, when Moonlight actually won, and Della Romansky gets up there and she's like, wow, I didn't think this was going to happen. Well, that was a great comment.
You start off the night with Mahershala Ali losing to Aaron Taylor Johnson. Your assumption is probably, oh no, they hated our movie. So, I mean... It's definitely a situation where I could see them going in the complete opposite direction this year, because maybe they potentially angered some studios, and maybe they want to right that ship a bit.
Maybe.
So, and because the state of the race is so open, it would be a natural extension. It wouldn't feel unorganic. It would feel appropriate for where the race is now. It wouldn't feel like they're trying to necessarily make everyone happy. It would just seem like, it's an uncertain stage of the race, so everybody gets something. So,
and I think the uncertainty of the race is why I think there's going to be some focus on the Globes, because it might set a pace. It might start something for somebody, or end it. It's really open. You mentioned Aaron Taylor Johnson, and I'm glad that you did, because we have another potential upset in the making in the same category this year in supporting actor, because that Christopher Plummer nomination is kind of sticking in my craw, and in my official predictions that are on the awards watch, I have him winning. It seems a little far-fetched, but I can see it.
Yeah, I think that category is wide open. I could see any of the nominees winning, except for probably Richard Jenkins. Armie Hammer sort of fits the bill of the young, sort of hunk actor that they tend to like to reward in this category. They just did it last year, obviously. And I was reading a lot of things where it's very similar to Aaron Taylor Johnson this year, where Armie Hammer has been attending a lot of their functions and whatnot. And they like that. They like that you notice them and whatnot. So, and then you have, obviously, Christopher Plummer, who has the narrative of all narratives. And it would be a fantastic moment for the HFPA to allow him to get up there and give a speech. And I'm sure he'd get a great ovation. And then you have Sam Rockwell, who's in a film they love. Probably the film they like the most. Well, you have Richard Jenkins, but of the 4 people, I think that can legitimately win this category. He's in the film they like the most.
And he's in the film almost as much as Armie Hammer is in his.
Yeah. Him like Armie, they're both sort of borderline lead in their films. And Willem Dafoe is obviously the critical consensus favorite right now. He is the favorite for the Oscar, at least the presumed favorite at this point. The one thing I would caution about Dafoe is, one, he's his film's only nomination, which isn't really necessarily a surprise. I don't think anybody was expecting any other Globe nominations for Florida Project.
Mm-hmm.
But the last 2 years of this category, the Oscar favorite, or at least the actor who went on to win the Oscar, lost at the Globes, Mark Rylance and Mahershala Ali. And much similar to Dafoe, who gives a very understated performance, those 2 actors give very understated performances. A very nice, decent, humble people, which is sort of anti how this category was for a while. You saw a lot of villainous characters, at least a lot of morally hazy characters in this category for a long time. Javier Bardem, Heath Ledger, Christoph Waltz, Christian Bale. All these actors were either playing straight up villainous characters, or someone like Bale whose character starts off kind of hazy and maybe gets a bit of redemption towards the end. And I guess that's sort of similar to Sam Rockwell, you could say. His character functions sort of the same way. But yeah, I mean, I think it's wide open, and I think the supporting categories is historically where the Globes have loved to throw curveballs. So
that's a good point about the performance types, because those previous losses were for some pretty subtle work, and the wins in this category have often been for very big, outrageous, scenery-chewing work.
Yeah.
Now, with these nominees, there isn't a lot of that. Not, somebody that's just like absolutely, tearing through the sheetrock.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but Rockwell's probably the closest.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jenkins and Dafoe are really understated performances, because I'll admit, after I saw Shape of Water at TIFF, my initial instinct that Michael Shannon was going to get sort of this industry push, not so much because he was better than Richard Jenkins, but because he was showier, and because Jenkins was so understated. Jenkins gives a beautiful performance, but it's in competition with someone in his own film who's chewing up the scenery for 2 hours. So that was a bit of a surprise. And like you said, I would say Sam Rockwell is probably the closest to that scenery chewing sort of aspect. But even then, I mean, he's not like a total ham in the movie. There's some quiet or understated moments in the film, especially sort of near the end of the film. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting category. If they start with it like they have in the past, you could see a situation where they go way off the board like they did last year when Aaron Taylor-Johnson was the first one up and won, and it sort of creates this whole chaos of confusion of where's this thing going to go. So it's maybe the category I'm most curious to see, just because I'll be curious if for the first time in the last couple of years, they cement the favorite, the front runner, or the offer a alternative. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think if one of those happens, if it's either Dafoe or Rockwell, I think people will grab onto that pretty tightly, and then proclaim them the new front runner pretty immediately.
Yeah.
Because even though Dafoe is kind of coming into this with the most critic wins, Rockwell's done very well too. He's not sleeping on this at all. So he is as formidable a contender here as Dafoe is. I think actually a Hammer or Jenkins win would be the surprise wins. Mm-hmm. But I'm still keeping Dafoe as my alternate in my my official predictions, just because I do kind of feel like he has front runner status. But I mean, just last year, it would defy what happened last year for that to happen. Which is why Plummer kind of, in a weird way, then makes sense.
Plummer would be the opportunity for them to create a moment out of that situation, right? I'm sure, not to say that any of the other nominees wouldn't give great speeches, but that would be a situation where, everybody would be talking about that, the whole historicalness of it. Plummer, I don't know about the Globes, but if he were to win the Oscar, which seems far-fetched, but if he wins the Globe, who knows? He would be the oldest nominee, I think, even if he was just nominated. And the Globe win would give him an opportunity to give a speech just prior to Oscar voting opening. And that would be a great platform for him, especially since he didn't get a SAG nomination. It very similar to Sylvester Stallone, who I think benefited a lot from getting up there and giving a Globe speech just before voting, because his film, like Plummer, he missed a SAG nomination. So I think it would be a good opportunity for one, the HFPA to give Plummer a nice moment, and two, allow him to give a speech just before the Academy starts filling out their ballots.
Well, it's exactly that's the thing I'm kind of thinking about. The Globes are on the 7th. Nominations voting starts tomorrow.
Yeah,
and it closes on the 12th. So that's a really great window to be a winner at the Globes, and get yourself a nomination at the Oscars.
Yeah, and I'm sure the nominees will be conscious of that, knowing that, especially the ones that are fringe contenders. I'm thinking another one, maybe like James Franco, who seems almost a dead certainty to win Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
unless Daniel Kaluuya can upset him. But there's been, I don't. It's a question of how much the HFPA liked Get Out, based on the fact he didn't get a director or screenplay nomination, and obviously Franco is a substantially bigger star than Kaluuya. So I'm sure Franco will be conscious of that because even though he's gotten SAG, Golden Globe nominations, there's been some uncertainty about whether he'll get in, mainly because the content of his performance and what movie he's in and what type of performance he's giving. So I'm sure if he's able to win, which I expect he will, he'll get up there and be conscious of the fact that people are watching, and this will be a good opportunity for him to, I guess, justify or make his case. And I'm sure Plummer, same thing. And then for the nominees who are fully expected to be nominated, it'll be a good chance for them to pivot to try and start creating that winner narrative or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's I think it's a perfect opportunity, and I think the Globes are doing this consciously, where they're making sure their awards are doing Oscar voting because they can give their favorites a leg up, knowing that these speeches will matter because people are checking off their ballots literally the exact same time these awards are happening.
Yeah, so on the James Franco thing, I have him as well, but I actually have Hugh Jackman as the spoiler, and
I could see it. It's not completely insane.
yeah, it's weird. I mean, I nobody should have been surprised by the nominations that movie got, but it's I can see, yeah, I can see it. It's not going to make any kind of impact at the Oscars. I don't think,
But they love their
Jackman
musical.
I don't think Jackman is a player there. Even if he were to win, he wouldn't be over Franco or Kaluuya.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be very oddball for that to happen. But I feel like Franco's got a pretty easy road to this win.
Yeah.
I don't even think you need to be familiar with The Room to watch this movie and his performance, at least within the context of a comedy category, and not be able to get it to him.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing working for him, it is a comedic performance, which, although I would say there's a lot of comedy in Get Out, I think it's fair to suggest much of that does not come from Kaluuya's performance, which is, I would say, for the most part, dramatic. He has some very funny reactions to things, but I think his key scenes in that movie, the ones that are going to get him the Oscar nomination, I expect, are more so the dramatic sense. So I think that's the other thing that could be to Franco's advantage. Although, I mean, they gave The Martian Best Picture comedy, so maybe they just don't care.
Yes, but no, I agree with you. I think the majority of Kaluuya's performance actually works against him in a comedy category.
Yeah.
The elements of the film that are comedic are not comedic in the same way that they are with a traditional comedy, and certainly not with The Disaster Artist.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it would be difficult to do that. If he were to win, it would be for something a little different than simply this is a comedic performance. It would be something else entirely.
Yeah.
But compared to, say, let's jump over to actress, because this seems like it's getting to be a closer race than it was even last week. I think most people probably have Saoirse Ronan pegged to win here. But maybe not that easily. Margot Robbie and I, Tonya are kind of just blowing up right now.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, voting will be done and it won't matter. But I think Margot Robbie is making a really, really serious challenge to Ronan here.
Yeah, and I think in some ways Margot Robbie gives the performance that the Globes more typically respond to than Ronan. It's a little more flamboyant. She's playing a real life person. I've heard a lot of things about the HFPA really liking I, Tonya.
Yep.
Although it didn't get director or screenplay nominations there, that just may be a case of that film not peaking at the point of when the nominations were announced. And I think, Robbie she's worked with a lot of people that the HFP like, Leo DiCaprio, Martin Scorsese, Globe's favorites, even Will Smith. So I think you're right. I think it's a lot closer than people think. And I think the other thing is there's a lot of places that you can reward Lady Bird without rewarding it here, whether that be Laurie Metcalf, screenplay for Greta Gerwig. It seems extremely likely to win Best Picture Comedy Musical. Mm-hmm. So this isn't necessarily an award they need to give Lady Bird. Now, the only other place conceivably they could reward I, Tonya is a lot more plausible, like you said, than she seemed a week ago, because it seems like her film is surging, because she gives the type of performance the Globes historically have responded to, and because she does feel like she's on the cusp, if she's not already there, of becoming a significant star and actress in the industry.
Yeah, and it's funny, these two movies, like some of the ones in drama, are competing directly against each other in the same categories. So there could be some splitting there between Allison Janney and Laurie Metcalf, Margot Robbie and Saoirse Ronan, and then the top category. It could either go all. I will say this though, the thing that gives me the push toward Lady Bird is were there to be a sort of sweep, I think Lady Bird is in a better position to win almost everything that it's nominated for versus I, Tonya.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I would be a little surprised. I mean, I don't think it's winning Best Picture by any stretch. Mm-hmm. But it's hard for me to see Janney and Robbie winning.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would say if both of them were winning, it would have gotten nominated somewhere else, whether that be screenplay or whatnot. So it's hard for me to see that happening. But if they really like it, like they apparently do, it's hard for me to see it winning nothing. So I think my sense is that one of them is going to win, but I'm not sure which one. It could be either one. So I mean, they both give very showy performances, and they're both going up against, I would say, more understated performances than Ronan and Metcalf, especially Metcalf. There's been my whole thing with Metcalf was that I figured she would win the majority of the critic awards like she has. Mm-hmm. My pause with her was that she does give an understated performance against a very showy performance, a far more showy performance in Janney, and this will be the first real test of can those critic wins for an understated performance translate to not necessarily the industry, because the HFPA, I should caution, isn't really, but the HFPA, like the Academy, historically has responded to more showy, flamboyant performances like Janney's than subtler ones like Metcalf's. So this will be the first real test of whether that can translate. And if Metcalf can translate those critic wins here, then I could see her just winning everything.
And which falls right in line with the Willem Dafoe thing. Exactly. If both of them win on Sunday at the Globes, there's nothing that's going to stop them at that point.
I think you're 100% right, because I think if both of them win, I expect they'll both just sweep.
Yeah.
But if they lose, then things get a little more interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of it comes down to who they lose to, right? Because if Willem Dafoe loses to, say, Armie Hammer or Christopher Plummer, I'm not sure if that's as damaging than if he loses to Sam Rockwell.
Exactly.
If he loses to Sam Rockwell, then he's in trouble. Because last year, I wasn't so worried about Ali losing to Aaron Taylor-Johnson because he didn't lose to Jeff Bridges or Dev Patel. Had he lost to one of those two, would have been a lot more worried. But because he lost to Aaron Taylor-Johnson, you could just sort of wipe it off as just a Globes thing. It's the same thing here. it's going to come down to who those two lose to. It seems highly unlikely that anyone other than Metcalf or Janney would win. But it's the HFPA. Mary J. Blige is Mary J. Blige. So maybe they throw a curveball there. But I'm very curious to see how those go, because if they can win there, I think it's clear that they can win anywhere.
Yeah.
Because this is the exact award show that challenges understated performances historically.
Yes,
so,
very, very much. And it's funny, both Metcalf and Janney are Globe nominees for television that have never won. But I think Metcalf only has like 2 for Roseanne, and Janney has like 6 or 7. This is her 7th Globe nomination. Her first for film, and she's never won. I feel crazy for not picking Janney to win here, because she makes so much more sense than Metcalf does.
Yeah.
And if I'm using the same logic and putting Willem Dafoe as an alt and not a winner, then I really should be doing that with Metcalf too.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time seeing them, even though they're the front runners. I have a hard time seeing them both win, just based on historically how the HFP has responded to the type of performances they give. But it could happen. I mean, this could be a year where maybe the HFPA just wants to reaffirm who the front runners are. And right now, I would say Dafoe is definitely the front runner, and I would say that Metcalf is a soft front runner over Janney. So, and like we said with I, Tonya, it seems far-fetched that both Robbie and Janney would win, but also on the flip side, if they liked it as much as everyone is saying, if it's surging like we seem to think it is, then it's hard to see them not give it something.
Yeah.
So it just comes down to, I would say, a coin flip, whether they go Robbie or Janney. Either one. The thing with the HFP, and it's important to remember, is because they're so small, you only need maybe 24, 25 votes to secure a win.
Yeah.
If the votes are sort of split out. So it's sort of crazy to think of it in those terms. But if the votes are fairly evenly distributed between 5 nominees in a given category, it's really sort of, shaking an extra hand, sending an extra card, signing an extra postcard. Really, it can be the difference between winning and losing there, which is something you can not say about the Academy. You can't say about SAG, because SAG has hundreds of thousands of members.
Mm-hmm.
But with the HFPA, so much of that matters. And I think Robbie has done a bit more campaigning than Ronan, largely because she's the producer of her film and Ronan's been off shooting a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, they're both shooting the same movie.
Oh, right. That's true. Okay, yeah. But I would say that Robbie is maybe a little more invested in her film's success solely based on being a producer.
And same goes for Janney. Janney is much more present than Metcalf.
Yeah. So
I think I'm gonna switch my prediction to Janney. Just talking through this, I swear to God.
It's tough because, those things can make a difference. With so few voting members, 1 or 2 vote swing could just change the dynamic of a given race. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, they both make a lot of sense. Janney and Metcalf for different reasons. Metcalf because she's the perceived front runner, the critical favorite, and Janney because she just gives the more larger than life, flamboyant performance. So, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how the supporting category specifically pan out for me, because that'll be a telltale sign of where Dafoe and Metcalf are. So, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm very curious to see how the room responds to certain actors and how when they win. I think we saw with Moonlight last year, won Best Picture, there was a huge pop in the room for that movie.
Yeah.
And we weren't sure how they were going to respond to it because it hadn't won anything up until Picture. It was supposed to win for Mahershala Ali. That didn't happen. So we didn't get a sense of how the room was reacting to it until the end of the night. And it's going to be the same way, whoever wins in whichever categories, they're going to get up there, and the room's going to respond to them in a certain way, and the majority of those people are going to be voting for the Oscars. So, it's a good chance to either reaffirm front runners or create a little confusion.
Yeah, absolutely. My goodness. Okay, so in thinking about it like that, and the wealth spreading that we were talking about, obviously giving Janney a win is a good shot for I, Tonya. If Sam Rockwell wins, he's at least got one for 3 billboards covered.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that film, kind of across the board, with win potential? Because obviously, when talking about Best Actress is going to be insane, and we started a little bit with the top category with motion picture drama, which is also a major contender for. Do you think that if Rockwell wins, say it's the first award, that is going to be a good bellwether for the film and for McDormand and screenplay and stuff like that? Because at the moment, I only have 3 billboards winning screenplay, and that is it, which I feel like is nutso.
Yeah, I think it would definitely be a good bellwether for it, because I think on paper, both actress and screenplay wins seem a little more likely. So you could see a situation where if it wins for Rockwell, then maybe you get the sense that it's going to grab a couple others. But I don't know. The Globes are weird. It's not like the Academy where I think there's easier signifiers early in the night when you're watching those awards. It could be a situation like that. Obviously, Frances McDormand has never won at the Golden Globes before. She lost especially 2 times where it seemed like she was far and away the front runner. Fargo, don't know how she lost there, and Mildred Pierce, again, don't know how she lost there.
Olive Kitteridge.
Olive Kitteridge, yes, thank you.
Yes.
But she seemed like the far and away front runner, especially with Olive Kitteridge. It seemed like, okay, this is finally going to be her time. But she doesn't really play the type of game that the Globes like, which is being chummy, going to their functions, talking, kissing ass,
dressing appropriately.
Yes, she doesn't do those sorts of things. So she's for them, she's someone that's a little bit quirky, a little bit of an outsider to them. That sort of, and I'm sure she views them the exact same way.
Yeah.
They're not 2 peas in a pod exactly. And even with that being said, you have Gary Oldman on the actor side, who it's his first nomination. He said some disparaging things against the HFPA, and in tow, they've never nominated him. So we could be in a situation here where potentially the HFPA has a chance to reward 2 actors essentially are seen as having biases or grudges or something against whatever you'd like to say. And maybe the HFPA views this as a good opportunity to reward 2 actors and dispel any sort of notion that they have certain biases or certain favorites that many people have sort of levied against them in the past. So
yeah, because they've definitely had a lot of scrutiny about the biases toward actors that they are for.
Yeah.
But the ones that they don't seem to be for, it doesn't get as much attention. Mm-hmm. And yeah, these are 2 actors that are now potential frontrunners in their categories that the HFPA has ignored. And in McDormand's case, the 2 major times that she's lost here, she went on to win the industry versions across the board,
mm-hmm.
which showed a real that's a great example. She's a 2-time great example of where the difference is between something like the Golden Globes of 90 journalists mm-hmm. versus once you get into industry awards from the people that are actually working in the profession.
Yeah.
And that changes things a lot.
Mm. I mean, we have heard a lot of the past few years the HFPA is trying to change in terms of being less biased in terms of stars, mega stars, A-list stars. And we've seen, there has been cases where we've seen that come to fruition. Johnny Depp being snubbed for Black Mass a couple of years ago after, he's been nominated for some things that he clearly did not deserve to be nominated for, but they wanted him in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been cases that, you can see strides are being made there in that respect. So I could see this being a good opportunity for them to reward McDormand and Oldman and saying, hey, look, all that's in the past. There's no, hard feelings or ill will to either of these actors. And maybe in trying to reform or reshape their image as an organization, this would be a good opportunity to give two actors who are very respected and have never sort of had that moment at the HFPA. I mean, Gary Oldman hasn't even been nominated by the HFPA. I mean, at least they've nominated Frances McDormand a handful of times.
Yes, and that is Darkest Hour's only nomination.
Yes, and that's one thing that could potentially work against Oldman, is that they did not care for his movie. That's despite the fact they actually liked Joe Wright quite a bit, because they gave Atonement, I believe they gave Atonement their Best Picture win about a decade ago.
Yep.
Against some pretty stiff competition that year.
Yes.
So that was a little weird. You figured maybe it gets at least maybe a score or a screenplay or just Best Picture drama nomination, but none of those things happened. So that's maybe something working against him.
I do think it's a weakness, yeah. And if, obviously, Timothée Chalamet is his closest competition, and, that film has a drama nomination and has a supporting actor nomination. I feel like just the same with SAG. If Chalamet's film had been a little bit stronger and gotten a director or a screenplay nomination, we'd be having a much closer, tighter race between these two. Although, it would also be just like the cruelest trick for the Globes to finally nominate Oldman, make him say something really nice about them in his thank you for my nomination speech, and then get him to the party and give it to Chalamet.
Yeah, I had read that Oldman's, they do, I guess, press conferences for certain movies, and I read that went very smoothly. Oldman was very, very nice to them, very kind.
Very.
And the HFPA, responded very well to that. So I'm sure Oldman was conscious of the past things he had said about them. So he wanted to make sure that there was no ill will there. And maybe while there wasn't any publicly, who knows if there's still some, internally on the part of certain members, especially the members who have been a part of that organization for a longer period of time than maybe some of the younger members, the newer members. But like you said, I think the thing with Chalamet is that I would be a lot more confident in the potential of him upsetting if it had gotten a screenplay nomination, if it had gotten a director nomination, or even if it had gotten an additional supporting actor nomination. But none of those things happened, so that makes him not implausible, but more far-fetched than he would have been otherwise.
Yeah, I think he's just a slightly further second, but if you're looking at it purely by numbers, he's in the better film. He's in the film that performed better.
Yeah.
And there are people predicting him. Chris Tapley is predicting Chalamet to win.
Yeah, and
he's been doing pretty well this season.
Yeah, I was going to say, credit to Chris Tapley. He's had some really strong predictions this year. He was right on the money with the foreign language shortlist, with BPM being left off it. So there could be something there for sure. And then you have even, someone like Daniel Day-Lewis. Although Phantom Thread didn't, get any nominations beyond him and I believe Score, it is his last movie, or at least so he says. So that could be a moment for the HFPA to recognize him. Although they've done that, they've had opportunities before, so I mean it's not something they need to do.
Yeah.
But that it's the potential for an upset is there.
It is definitely there.
Yeah. And the HFPA does like Sony Pictures Classics, Chalamet's studio, and we saw, much like Chalamet, Isabelle Huppert win Best Actress against some pretty significant competition last year. And much like Chalamet, she had won, some of the major critic prizes. So you could see a repeat of that for sure, where the HFPA sort of wants to go against the grain a bit, at least in the industry terms.
Yeah.
And say, hey, this is us making a statement. We're not so much, just necessarily going to fall in line with the industry here and give it to Chalamet. But I'm leaning to the idea that this will be an opportunity to put hard feelings aside and say, hey, we're over this, and give it to both Oldman and McDormand. And I think it'd be a really good opportunity if the HFPA is really trying to change their image a bit, giving it to two actors that they have historically, at least seemingly, not been fans of. Giving them prizes for these performances, I think, would be an excellent opportunity for them to shed sort of any sort of hard feelings they're seen to have had against them. So I'm leaning to the idea of both Oldman and McDormand winning, and saying, hey, this is the direction we're going in, and I think it'd be good for them, and I think it'd be obviously great for Oldman and McDormand. Oldman's obviously the front runner in his category, and if McDormand's not the front runner, she's pretty close. So it'd be big for her.
Yeah, I mean, well, and then you would also have to put Allison Janney in that group because this would be her 7th nomination without a win as well. But on to Best Actress. It's the exact same scenario as motion picture drama.
Yep.
Because Streep, McDormand, and Hawkins are in the top 3 nominated films. Mm-hmm. And oh my God, this category is driving me insane.
And I mean, obviously, getting Meryl Streep to get up there and give a speech when she's playing, at least within the context of her film, she's playing a character that has a lot of similar traits to Hillary Clinton. That's an opportunity to maybe allow her to get up there and give a political speech, and obviously it would drive a certain political figure nuts if she were to do that.
Yes,
and I'm sure
absolutely.
the HFPA would relish a moment like that.
I think they would. I think they would too. But in of the 5 nominated performances in that category, Streep is by far the most subtle and reserved.
Yep.
By far. She has like the one little crying jag in the bedroom, but compared to everybody else, it is the epitome of reserved.
Yeah. I mean, even Jessica Chastain, who I would say is extremely likely to win, gets monologue after monologue, and she gets to rip off Aaron Sorkin dialogue for 2.5 hours. So, I mean, in that sense, I mean, I'm not saying that, Jessica Chastain is more likely to win than Meryl Streep, but it sort of serves your point that all the other performances here are just more showy than Streep. I mean, even Hawkins, who doesn't speak in her movie, because she's playing a mute character, she gets to emote and in very dramatic situations, very high-stakes situations. And she's also, she's won a lot more awards to this point than Streep has, obviously. So
yes,
I think that it's probably between McDormand and Hawkins, with Streep as the spoiler. Partially because be the only place they can give the Post an award. So maybe this is where they decide to give it an award. But
that's kind of where I'm at too, and I have the Post as runner-up, or or alternate in actress and in best motion picture, because those are its 2 likeliest chances. Really?
Yeah, I agree. Those are the only 2 that I could conceivably see it winning. The other categories seem a little far-fetched.
Yeah, and again, are they going to give a 6-time nominated film from Spielberg, Streep, and Hanks nothing?
Yeah.
For the first time in 40-something years?
Yeah, they're 3 of the biggest, industry figures, for the past, 30, 40 years, they've been everywhere. So it would be somewhat shocking to see them nominated all those places and not give one of those people the opportunity to give up there and give a speech, especially with the timely nature of the film. You'd figure they'd give really, emotional, highly engaged speeches. So that would feel a little odd, but at the same time, like you said, right now I'm having a hard time placing where it would win. It's just difficult because it makes so much sense for them to at least give one of those three people an opportunity to get up there and give a speech, but they're in such tough categories. I mean, with Spielberg, I guess you can transition to director now. You have, Christopher Nolan, who, in many respects, I would argue is, for his generation of filmmakers, arguably, at least within a certain demographic and a certain generation, the defining director, much like Steven Spielberg in a way when he was younger and growing up, in the sense that Nolan combined sort of these big, large-scale productions with maybe more thought, maybe more care than the average director would on working with those budgets. And we have the opportunity, obviously the HFPA has an opportunity to allow him to get up there and win his first sort of major award of his career. And that would be, he's one of those directors who, he has a name that's synonymous with him, which I'm not sure Del Toro, who I would argue is the other sort of co-front runner here, has that same sort of appeal, at least to the masses, general audiences. I don't think they know him quite as well as they know Nolan. But in saying that, I get the sense that The Shape of Water is in a slightly better place than Dunkirk is in the race. But I think it's between those two, Del Toro and Nolan. And I've gone back and forth. Del Toro makes the most sense, but I'm really liking the idea of them giving Nolan, his platform to give, a speech for the first time in his career, really, at any sort of televised award show.
I guess if that's what they feel like that they've been lacking is a Christopher Nolan speech. I don't know, and outside of IMDb, if that's really or Reddit, if that's the case, but
yeah, I know. I don't know what the term is. He's not, but he has a very specific thing where he has a fan base, a very intense, strong fan base, more so than Del Toro. But the thing is, Dunkirk feels like it's been slagging in the race a bit more than Shape of Water has. I had Dunkirk out front for an extended period of time.
Most people did.
It seemed like a very soft front runner. It seemed like something that was just a placeholder.
Yep.
And it's missed certain things, and people have said, well, that's just because it's not really an actor's movie, even though Missing SAG Ensemble, even though it is by definition an ensemble movie. No, it's not an actor's showcase per se, but it is an ensemble of actors working together by its very definition. So I think it could have gotten in at SAG, and I think it not getting in there was a bigger deal than some people thought. So I've gone back and forth on this, and I think I'm just going to end up predicting Del Toro because it feels like that's the way the wind's blowing. A lot of people were thinking, a picture-director. And now it seems like that's flipping towards Del Toro being the director, and then maybe another movie-winning picture, or it could be a situation where Del Toro wins both.
I think both. I'm 100% with Del Toro winning here, like 100%.
Yeah. I mean, the screenplay nomination here was significant because The Shape of Water, I would say, has gotten a lot more acclaim for its direction and screenplay. So the fact he nominated it in screenplay as well shows a lot of passion for it. And the fact that it got 3 acting nominations as opposed to just the 2 it got at SAG. Octavia Spencer did get in here. Yep. She didn't get in SAG. So maybe that's a telltale sign that they like it.
Yeah, it got everything that it could outside of Michael Shannon. So it's extremely strong here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I really feel like he's who I feel the most comfortable with. Probably of almost any of the predictions other than like Coco for animated film or something like that.
And he's such a lovable guy, right? I'm sure that if you watch him in interviews, if you watch him at Q&As, he is just such a generous, caring guy. I've seen him tweet a lot of stuff about how much he loves a lot of the movies that are coming out this year. A lot of movies that his movie is competing against for awards. He's tweeting so generously and enthusiastically about this, and it feels genuine. It doesn't feel like, oh, he's just trying to please everybody. He's trying to suck up. It just seems like he's such a genuine person, and I'm sure, that's important to feel genuine without giving off the sense that you're sucking up or just trying to win an award. Everything about him just feels genuine and honest and real. And I'm sure when he screened the movie for the Hollywood Foreign Press, when he did his press conference, that he was the same way. And it creates, not only is that movie strong enough that he could win without that, but it definitely adds something to his chances. With Nolan, he's a little more closed off in interviews. He's a little more unwilling to maybe say things in a certain way or be super open and giving. Not saying that Nolan's difficult person to interview or talk to. I don't know that firsthand. Just based on what I've seen of the two of them, I just get the sense that with a HFPA, he would just, he's the type of director that would go up there and give a speech about how much he loves cinema and how important cinema is and how we need to work to be better as a society. And I'm sure he'd give a lovely, beautiful speech. I saw Shape of Water at TIFF, and his Q&A was beautiful. The way he talks is beautiful. His enthusiasm, his zest for life, his zest for cinema is very contagious. So, I think Del Toro is going to win, where he just becomes the de facto director frontrunner, regardless if his film wins picture or not. I think we're going to see that a lot more splits in picture director with the preferential ballot. And I think that he's just going to ride that wave, regardless if his film wins picture or not. It could, but I think regardless, he's just going to become that de facto frontrunner and roll all the way to the Oscars.
I totally agree, and I agree with everything you just said about him and his personality and his passion for cinema and how much he loves to talk about it and applaud other people. I think that is... It's really weird. I was just having this conversation a couple of hours ago with someone, and he's also a filmmaker that has a lot of passion for other people's films. Yeah. And there is that sense of community that can come out when people that make movies, either behind the scenes or in front, really are very passionate about what they do, and not just them, but other people, and not just, when you win an award and say, I'm inspired by all the people in my category, when that isn't always true, because person A isn't going to know who the fuck person B is, period. Yeah. So there's a little bit of...
Toro is a cinephile, right?
Yes.
He watches these movies, he responds to them, and people know that he watches and loves these movies because he's always talking about them. Not even within the context of an award show or whatever. So, like I said, he's just very genuine, and I think that counts for a lot. And I think when you're giving off the sense that you appreciate others' work, feeling like campaigning, which it doesn't, because I get the sense, he's done this forever, and this is really his first, real sort of awards run. Yeah, he was nominated for Pan's Labyrinth in I think screenplay. But this film is a completely different beast than Pan's Labyrinth in the sense of how big a contender it is. That's what I was advocating for Del Toro before this sort of run started, even before Shape of Water screened, was that his humility, his sort of thirst for life, his thirst for cinema, how he talks, how he carries himself, was going to take him along. The movie delivered, and it did. And now I think we're seeing the fruits of that come to life, and I think it's going to pay off in a big way, because I think it's so easy to vote for someone like him.
Yes, exactly.
Not just because of the directorial achievement of the movie, but because of the person. And it would also give them an opportunity to, make him the third amigo to win Best Director Oscar with Iñárritu and Cuarón.
Yeah. And
so that on top of all those things I just listed. So, yeah, the more I talk about this, the more I think Del Toro is just going to run the table.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that funny how that kind of happens? This happens to me with almost every podcast.
Yeah.
Either I talk myself into something, or I listen to somebody else, and I'm like, oh my God, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I'm just getting
the sense he's going to be like an Alfonso Cuarón, and whether his movie wins Best Picture or not, it doesn't matter. He's winning Best Director.
Yeah, he's gonna have the film with the most nominations, most likely.
Yeah.
And I almost have the sense that I know it's not an exact comparison, and I'm not trying to make an exact comparison, but it's almost like when The Revenant and Mad Max were these pretty wild genre films, massive amounts of nominations, almost all of them in direct competition with each other, including every single technical against each other.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's going to be some of that this year, but probably more in the Blade Runner Dunkirk kind of field, and they might dominate that, while The Shape of Water kind of comes in and actually pulls out the end. But it is a film that's going to be competing in all of those categories too. So that is, I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but that is, to me, going to be a very, very, very fun race of how many films are in direct competition with each other. But I'm in agreement with you on Del Toro. So for me, looking at the wins, I kind of have Shape of Water doing very, very well. Actress and picture and director, but not screenplay. So I don't know. It's I agree that I don't think there's going to be any more than 2 or 3 wins for a single film.
Yeah.
It feels like that.
Yeah, it feels like that because of, like we said, the uncertainty of the race and the fact that he went huge on one movie last year. Those two factors combined make it feel like it's going to be a situation where the split the wealth, and it may not just even be a conscious decision on their part. It just may come that way organically just because of how fractured everything feels right now. So I fully expect we're going to see no film win more than 2 or 3 awards. If something were to win 5 or 6, I'd be very surprised. I'm not expecting a sweep, but I'm leaning towards Shape of Water doing well, especially the more we've talked about it the last hour or so. I'm getting the sense that it could win, maybe all 3: picture, director, and actress.
That's where I have it. That's exactly what I have.
Yeah, and that, even though those are arguably the 3 biggest awards tonight, it's still only 3 awards. It's not like the huge sweep of La La Land last year. So
yeah, and that opens up 2 other acting categories and score and screenplay.
Exactly. There's still plenty of room to spread the wealth that way. So so that's not a concern of giving all the love to one movie. So I could definitely see that. But I expect Shape of Water to do well. I expect Lady Bird to do well. But I still think they'll find a way to reward a 3 billboards, whether that be in supporting actor or screenplay, or even maybe a Dunkirk and something like score, or I, Tonya, like we've discussed with either Robbie or Janney. I think they'll still find ways to cover their bases, even if they go big on Shape of Water, like I'm starting to lean towards. And that's probably what they want to do this year, with how the race is going, and how that. I mean, I don't want to say that the La La Land sweep was the thing that sort of started the backlash or the downward trajectory, but it certainly felt like a lot. And I think I got the sense in the room that night that a lot of people in that room who vote on the Oscars felt like it was a lot, and they, by the 5th or 6th award, were going, okay, we get it. So maybe they want to be conscious, really, like, not to over-reward them so that they go on to do well at the Oscars, because I'm sure they're like normal people and they want the films they love to do well at the Oscars. So maybe there's a sense that, okay, we don't have to give this movie 6 awards, let's give it 2 or 3. Let's make sure it gets its moment, but let's not overdo it. So that it's not a case of, people getting fatigued by a certain movie, which I think is exactly what happened with La La Land last year. I think there was a fatigue by a certain point with that movie, and it started to wear. And the sense of a front runner that it had since it premiered way back in Venice, that's a long time to be the front runner and be in that position, and it's an easy peg to be removed of when it goes for that long. So I think we'll see plenty of wealth spreading, and I think we'll see surprises, but not a ton. I think the supporting categories is the most ripe for something like that to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I think if Willem Dafoe wins, he can breathe a huge sigh of relief, because I think that'll seal the deal for him. I think he'll just run the table.
Yeah, I agree.
I think if those two win, I think he can just breathe easy and say, okay, this is it. We're going all the way. If they don't win, it's not panic time, but it's maybe time to say, okay, we need to step it up a bit. And like I said, a lot of it comes down to who they would lose to. You want to lose if you're going to lose. You want to lose to someone who's probably not going to win the Oscar. Christopher Plummer, Armie Hammer, Richard Jenkins are probably not going to win the Oscar.
Yeah.
Sam Rockwell, that's a little different. That would be a little more damaging.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
those things are important, and we'll see how these sort of play out as the night goes on.
Yeah, I agree. So I want to wrap up the podcast with asking you, and I will reveal mine as well, the win that you would like to see the most, the single win you would like to see the most.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to go off the board, and I'm going to say Loveless in foreign language film.
Oh my God, which we didn't even talk about.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
But I think it's because all the main categories. I think there's just a lot of strong contenders this year. It's not something to be mad about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I prefer. I think that just speaks to the quality of the movies this year. So yeah, that's why I'll go off the board and say foreign language films. But I expect they'll give Angelina Jolie her moment there, especially because she did not make the shortlist for. So it'll be a nice way to give her that moment for her first real movie that I think a lot of people really responded to.
Yeah, I have it up as my alt, but I kind of am tempted to put it up there, and I think I might switch out to a Fantastic Woman.
Her being left off the shortlist actually helps her here, because it's her one chance to give a speech. And the Globes, although they've seemed to stay away from the star stuff a little bit more lately, they still love their stars. Not much bigger than Angelina Jolie. So
yeah. Well, it would be a more legitimate nomination and win than The Tourist, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm picking, and probably not to too much surprise, I am picking Timothée Chalamet as my want to win.
Yeah.
For Best Actor.
Can't argue with that.
I mean, I would love it if the film won. That would be fantastic. But I want this performance to win. I want the best performance of the year to win.
Yeah. Oh no, I 100% agree. I think it's the performance of the year, and I think this might be the only televised award show that he could potentially win. So I want him to get that moment as well. So that would, of the main categories, I'd agree with that one. That would be the one I'm pulling for most.
Yeah. Well, he should be able to win Indie Spirit, but
yeah, that's true.
But
I mean, the Indie Spirits, as much as I love them, don't have the same general audience appeal as the Golden Globes. So this will be a nice moment for him to introduce himself to the world, because I think he's going to be obviously an extremely important actor going forward.
Yes, and boy, talk about somebody who is absolutely doing the rounds. My goodness, just working it. Okay, great. I think that's where we'll go from here. The Globes are this Sunday, January 7th. I hope you have a chance to have listened to this before then, or listen to it after and go, oh my God, what were these guys thinking? They were crazy. Also, when you're done listening to this, come right back to awardswatch.com and look at my Golden Globe predictions, because they might have changed from 3 days ago. We'll see. I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay. I think that's all there is for today. I'm super excited for the show. I have a costume already. I won't tell you what it is, but you might find it on social media if I get drunk enough.
I have a guess. I think I know where you're going with this. I won't say publicly. But you haven't actually told me, but it was the first thing that popped in mind, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. So
wow. Okay. Well, after I stop recording this, I'm gonna ask and see if you're right.
okay.
Okay. As always, come to awardswatch.com. Go to awards_watch on Twitter, Awards Watch on Facebook and Instagram, and wherever you can find me. And I think that's it. Thank you, Matt, so much for joining me on this Thursday evening, which is a much later evening than it is for you, I think.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.